All right, y'all. We are back. Wanted to give you some props, you all, for first of all having some kick-ass graphics and design people either helping you out or you're doing it yourselves, right, Victor? So I'm gonna try my best to at least be in the building, be represented here. So I'm gonna introduce our folks, our panel. They're going to be talking about what it takes to be a successful indie publisher. So I'm going to start us off with Jack Harris. He's the creator and author of Terminus Veil, which is produced by his company Clash Digital Publishing. I'm going to do that for your voiceover, I think, for your commercials when they come out. Clash was founded on 3 key principles, which are high quality artwork, diverse characters from different backgrounds, and explosive, thrilling action. Terminus Veil Volume 1 is a trade paperback, which includes issues 1 through 4. In addition, the trade features character biographies, background story details, and concept art. That's over 90 pages of sequential art and another 30 plus pages of complementary content. And if you like action of American style comic books like X-Men and Wildcats, or the intricate high-tech feel of mangas like Ghost in the Shell, this book is for you. Hello. So if you're here, hopefully you get one of those. Thank you for participating. Now we're going to transition to Lesserknowncomics. Was founded in November of 2020, which is like yesterday, right? So let's talk about how successful he's been able to do this in a short amount of time and kicking butt. So it had initially started with Mark Bernal, founder and writer, trying to make a graphic novel. And in the process of finding illustrators, he decided that he wanted to work with multiple indie comic book creators and form a company that helps give aspiring comic book creators a place to launch their careers. And in the few years, Lesserknowncomics has worked with over 50 illustrators, writers, graphic designers, and other team members. That sounds like an army. We have created over 32 comic books. That's what Mark says, and graphic novels to date. Jeez. And are currently working on dozens more and for 2024 and beyond. So if you haven't seen the catalog, check it out. Their booth is dope. Their website, everything. And then my friend, last but not least, my friend Victor J. Irizarry, also known as Vodlines, is a cartoonist and comic book creator. He began making comic books in 2015 with a self-published title, Flying Somnia. In the years since, Victor has had a career as a concept artist and cover artist for Image Comics, working on retailer exclusive covers for titles including Ice Cream Man #25, which I actually have, brother. I'm gonna need you to do a remark. I'm gonna have to chase you down. All right, Lady Mechanica #1, and most recent Zombies versus Robots #1. He's published 6 books and is the creator of R.E.D. That's another book I have to get you to sign as well. Victor has been a guest artist at various comic conventions in Arizona, Phoenix Fan Fest, and Tucson Comic Con. Victor has a master's in architecture and is currently practicing architecture with RSP Architects in Tempe, Arizona, and teaches a visual storytelling class at Arizona State University. I don't know how he finds time to actually do his own books, but that's a whole nother story. And he'll let you know how he does it in this segment. So Victor is a husband and father of 2 amazing boys and 2 beautiful dogs. He was born in Humacao, Puerto Rico, you got to say it right, and has lived in Arizona for the past 23 years. To learn more about him, please visit his website, vodlines.com, or follow him on Instagram. I do have to flex a little bit, Victor. As you know, that is an original piece that Victor made, and I copped it. I was like, Victor, I need that in my life. So, yeah, it's a cool freaking piece of original art. So thank you so much. All right, y'all ready to jump into it? So this is what I want to do. As with every interview, I want to make sure that each of you kind of have some a snapshot about who you are, how you came up, and not just in the business, but as a kid growing up, and really what prompted you. So if you could frame, part of this conversation, talk about how how those influences came about in your life, and then also how they influenced your comics and loving comic books. So I'm gonna have each of you share a story, and then we'll popcorn it to the next person. So I'm gonna have, let's see, who would like to start first? How about that? Mark is he's grinning. Okay, Jack, go ahead. No, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah. I grew up I was in the 80s, early, I said late 80s. And so all of those G.I. Joe, Thundercats, all those cartoons that came on during that time just, caught me. I was playing video games way early, probably why I play them so much now. I had a Sega Master System back when I was like 5. And so the geekdom just took to me very early. Started collecting comics. By the time I was probably about 11 or 12, I was reading comics like Wildcats and Grifter, stuff that I probably shouldn't have been reading at 11 or 12. But I had them though. And, as I started reading them more and more, I started just trying to create my own. I was just trying creating characters. Me and my cousin were really close, and he loved to draw, and we'd always talk comics and all that. And so we'd be just on the phone talking about characters we created. We'd share each other the books we had kind of made, all of that. And so by the time I was, a full teen, I thought this was what I would do for a living, was create comics, and found out that wasn't quite as good at art. And I was pretty good at math, and so my parents really pushed me to go into the computer programming side of stuff, and I was pretty good at that. I do enjoy it, and that's what I do today. But just writing code for businesses is boring to me. You know what I mean? Like I can do it, I'm good at it, but it's boring. And so about 2 or 3 years ago, well, I should say before then, for the last 10 plus years, I've been writing Terminus Veil, just building this world and everything. And so about 2020, I was just sitting there, laying in bed, just not feeling like going to work. And I was like, something's got to change. And so, you know what, I was just like, hey, let's try to put this comic out. I've been thinking about this idea for forever. It's kind of what I really want to do. And so I just got to it and started producing books. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of my background story. So I'll leave it there.
It's very heroic. I see another comic book coming down the pike with your face on it. So amazing. All right, who's next? They're about to do Victor scissors shoot.
Is it me?
All right, Bart, go ahead.
Is it me?
Yeah, go ahead, Victor. Go ahead.
Okay, all right. I guess my origin story started back in Puerto Rico. I loved drawing since I was a kid. Like every other artist that I know, and I used to use drawing as kind of like an escapism. Like I would just draw fantastic ideas, and I remember my mom would always ask me, "Well, what does that mean? What does that mean?" And then my brother and I would just play with drawing, which is kind of a fun thing to do. Like when we would challenge each other, "Oh, draw this or draw that." So I would say he was a big influence for me. But then later on in high school, I was battling with, because I liked science and math, and so kind of similar thing. And the teacher asked me or pushed me to study architecture, which I had no idea. I come from a very poor background. I grew up in the projects back in the island. So some people would not truly believe, or that that a guy from the ghetto can make it that far. And that was a challenge for me. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. So in the 90s, I was reading. I have a friend of mine who kind of introduced me to Spawn, and I fell in love right away. I don't know. I mean, you got to keep in mind it was all in Spanish, right? So I'm reading a comic book in English, but I can understand what's happening. So it was all about the visual storytelling, and I just fell in love with that. And then after a while, kind of transition to more like the indie stuff, because I was learning more about the arts of just storytelling. In architecture, we did that a lot through kind of to explain projects and do a pitch for an idea. So it wasn't like, I mean, through this entire time, I had ideas. I had my characters, and I had Flying Somnia was my first comic book that I drew like maybe 5 times before I published over and over. And I met a guy that just pushed me to just do it. And I read a couple of books on that I can talk about it later. And I just went for it and published my first book in 2015. And then learn from that, like what not to do, and then just kept, doing and redoing. And then 6 books later, I feel like I have a better idea of how to self-publish my comic books. So yeah, I feel honored that I have created, Flying Somnia, R.E.D, robotic enhanced device, and Sawara Joe. It's my latest one. So and hoping to, I have a few more ideas in my mind. So maybe, I don't know, partner with some talented artists out there and publishers. I don't know. I mean, do you know anybody?
Good segue. Good segue. Mark, I think he passed the baton to you. I think that was like a indirect way of saying, hey, want to work together?
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I've been lurking on Victor's Instagram for quite a while. So Mark Bernal. So I did draw. I like a lot of things that I almost forgot like what my childhood was like. I joined the Army when I was like 20. I did 17 years. I would have done the 20, but got medically discharged at the very end. But it wasn't until like a buddy of mine was like, oh, of course you make comic books now. Like I remember when you used to make like comic books, like and we'd staple them with computer paper together and bring them over to my house. I was like, oh, what? Like I totally forgot, that I did that. Because I mean, I don't feel that old, but like, I guess I'm turning 39 this year. It's like, oh, that's, it's 30 years ago, right? That's crazy. And then, with Lesser Known Comics, I got started in the same way that we talked about. And, somebody pointed to me, when I was in my late high school days, I played in a punk band and had friends that played in punk bands and meet people. And it was kind of the same thing we would do in Lesser Known Comics. We'd say, okay, well, I can get us into a venue on, here in the Oakland area. Can you get us up in a venue up in Santa Rosa or over in Sacramento or down in San Jose, right? So like this collective, this informal collective kind of formed. And that's really kind of what Lesser Known Comics is. We're a publisher, but we're at the same time, we're like this hippie commune. We're like this art collective. We're just like this hangout area as well, where people are just like learning from each other. My favorite parts of that is like what I call like the hive mind, where like I see in our group chat, like someone's like trying to figure out how to do something, right? Hey, I want to, I'm trying to do whatever, right? And then like 4 or 5 people just like someone comes up with a solution and someone comes up with the solution plus like a cool feature. And then someone comes up with another cool feature. And then someone comes up with a way to merge it all together. And you're just like, whoa, that was really rad to watch, and it's just very cool to kind of, I feel like a gardener in that space where all I'm just trying to do is, create that, community there where, I could just create conditions and get people's obstacles out of the way so they can make comic books. But, looking back at, my origin story, I guess I was doing that for quite a while, So, yeah, that's what brings us to today.
That's awesome. Yeah. So now that we have your superpowers addressed and where you all are headed in your direction, I'm still trying to figure out mine. Maybe this is my superpower, just getting people together. So that's cool too.
That is a superpower.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your publishing and kind of like the budding interest / now into a full business, and what were some of the things that you've learned from that experience, particularly around like the bumps and bruises, but also like the successes, and what were some takeaways from that? So I'll put it over to Mark first, then Victor, and then Jack. So we'll do a round robin. I'll mix up the order.
Yeah, I think the big thing that I've found is what is common sense is not always common practice. So you see what other publishers are doing or what's happening in the space, and it's really easy to take that as oh, that's just the way it is, but there's a lot of people who feel like there are better ways to do things. When we talk about there's a lot of bad business practices out there. There's also like a lot of folks who enter business relationships in like a very transactional method where they don't want to trust the other person and they want 1,000 things, right? They want to plan for the worst case scenario. And then there's most people deep down inside, they feel like, oh, okay, like I want to get to a place where there's community and we can trust each other. We can work on something that we're excited about, you know, you know, once you find that tribe of folks, you know, that operate that way, you know, that give without, you know, expecting, you know, like complete reciprocation and things like that, you know, and don't keep tally, don't keep score, you know, that just want to make cool things. It changes, you know, so, you know, unfortunately on the business end, you know, we're a little bit in the throes of late stage capitalism. So there's a lot of problems in the business portion of it. Right. So learning that, taking that as, just because the big guys are doing it does not mean it is the best practice. I actually had a call last night with a big publisher, that was telling me, it was interesting. They feel painted into a corner in a lot of they said, man, I wish I was over there doing that, what you guys are doing. I'm stuck rolling this ball up the hill, you know, this boulder up the hill is just going to keep, and but that's where my company is at, you know. And it was really interesting to feel that, like, you know, that juxtaposition to be like, oh, wow, okay. Like, I'll come to you asking for advice. And you're saying, man, I wish I was sitting over where you are. It's just a weird place to be. So I would encourage people, as you think about what you want to do in this space, you know, just because it's common practice does not mean it's the best way to do things, you know, and be creative. I'm gonna shut up and get off that soapbox.
No, that's a great point, because again, people approach businesses differently in the comic book world. You know, that's why folks left Marvel and did their own thing with Image, right? And now Image is sort of a big wig, right? And so how do they operate? What's their system? Has it changed a little bit? I would say that it has to some degree. And so they've lost some people, and, you know, the big wigs were able to bring back, you know, Jim Lee, and, you know, sell his company. He's like, I want to get back to being creative and not dealing with some of that, you know, business stuff. But again, I digress. So I'm going to pass it off to Victor. Victor, you know, what were some things that you learned, and also, you know, what were some takeaways?
Oh, absolutely. So for me, it has been from more of the artist's point of view. I'm kind of being in search of a dream, or just kind of making a dream come true, which it happened when I first published my book, my first book. But it all started with the what, the why, and the how. Like, I'm always asking myself, what am I doing? Like, let's say in this case was a story, a comic book. I wanted to kind of create this one character, and then the why, it was literally I just want to do a comic book. And then the how was always like the unknown. I just didn't know how to do it. And at the time when I started, all you knew about was the big names, right? Image, but, you know, Marvel, blah, blah, blah. And I knew that it is a very saturated world out there with a lot of great talent and a lot of competition. And so in my way, it was like, well, I kind of don't want, I never liked the clean, curated superhero style. Like, I always liked more like the grittiness of, like, you know, Paul Pope or Jim Mafu, or like there's something about that style that was more punk rock in a way. And I came across a guy who kind of at a comic book store, and I would walk in, and going to the comic book store was like a meditation time for me. I don't want to talk to you. Don't talk to me. So this guy kept coming at me. I noticed that you're picking up like some indie stuff, and I'm like, yeah. And then he started pulling stuff out that, you know, books that was like, okay, all right, now we're talking. And he introduced me to that mindset of like, hey, you know, because I used to believe my art was not good, and I'm pretty sure a lot of artists feel the same way. I battle with that all the time still, how to get better and better and better, right? And he was like, he told me, hey, it literally is like punk rock, you know, it's not for everybody. but once you get a patron or two, you will get out there. Like your work will get out there, and it's not going to be 100,000 followers, but there will be 1,000 followers that are true followers that will be supporting you, for forever and ever, as much as possible. But so in the search of the how I was going to do this, I read a book called The Unnatural Talent by Jason Brubaker. And that book helped me lose fear to share my work, because my fear is like, they're going to steal my ideas and this and that, right? So I learned a lot about self-publishing and what it meant. And it was kind of new at the time, the legal aspects of it and what platforms you could use. Amazon had a platform that now I think is called, Kimball Publishing. I forgot the name. And then I started learning more about it, meeting people that like Mark, or seeing other people that were doing it, and just kind of self-publishing, like, Jake Parker and whatnot, that created Inktober, but also self-published a bunch of books. So asking questions, hey man, how do you go about this? How do you do it? And that and consistency, like not letting people, like not being afraid of failure. It is one of the scariest things, and it's always been for me. So kind of staring at that monster in the face and be like, okay, it's okay. You publish something, it's not perfect, but it's finished. I can hold the book and be like, hey, here's my latest book, and it's in my hands. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not an idea, it's not an abstract. It's a book. And I can do stickers, and I can do, there's something about it that even if it's not perfect, it's there, and it encourages you to keep going. And then all of a sudden you have 2 or 3 people asking you, what is the next one coming out? And that's when you really get nervous, because I'm doing everything by myself. So, but yeah, so that's been my journey in the self-publishing world, and I can share a lot of, things that I've learned in the process. One of them being patient. Just be patient and do not sacrifice quality for quantity. And a lot of people, my thing is, I want my books to stand alone and like be in the shelf and compared to something that's being published by Image, for example. So the quality of the paper, the colors, all of that, and obviously with that comes some cost. So there's things that I have to always navigate and how to make it happen.
I'm still tripping that you said you don't think your stuff is good, because I literally, I don't know if you saw my eyes pop out of my head, but I was like, what? But I get what you're saying. I mean, I think sometimes we're our worst enemy in a sense, and that imposter syndrome creeps up, especially when that happens. Real follow-up question to that: did you feel like the community has been good to you as far as like mentoring you with when you had questions?
Yes. That's not always been the case. I got to tell you the truth. When I first started, I remember I walked into a place that does not exist here anymore, and I was the new guy. And there was a clique already, a group of people doing this type of stuff. And some were skeptical, and some others just came in and really helped me. I mean, they were, hey, you have stuff here. You can self-publish. And that's kind of where I was like, what does that even mean? And some people pointed me in the right directions and what not to do. The simplest thing about what paper should I use to do my art? How much time? How do I write a plot? Do I even need to write a plot to create a comic book? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's all these things that I started to feel comfortable, and meeting people that supported me. So yes, there's 1 or 2 outliers, but honestly, most of the people that I come across, they've always been supportive. And it's been always my attitude of more of a humble approach, because that's kind of how I grew up. And my mom always say, hey, you don't know everything. And, you will sometimes be the least smart person in the room, but you will, just make sure that you're listening and learning as much as possible from people.
I will say that last weekend when we all got together, I definitely was like glued. I probably could have talked to you all for a little, at least another 2-3 hours. So I'm glad I get this. Hopefully we can do it, offline in the future. But I want to hear Jack's version of kind of like where his journey has gone as well, and some of the things he's learned and takeaways.
Yeah, man, so much. But I think as far as what's been key, it's well, I guess I'll start off saying that a lot of stuff that Victor was just speaking on, I can definitely relate to. And my vision of kind of what I wanted to deliver was, hey, I just wanted to do the best book I could do, right? And like you said, sit it up on the shelf somewhere and look at it and be like, yeah, it could stand against another book in this store and not feel totally like it was, the worst book in the world or whatever. But the I also took a lot. I used to rap, and I love rap music, and I took a lot from what people who are in the indie side of rap would do, and especially in the '90s when you could actually sell CDs, which was they would sell CDs out of their trunk, right? And they would go wherever, and just sell CDs. And I kind of took that same approach with Terminus Veil. It was like, hey, like, oh, there's an event. It's an art show. Yeah, it might not be directly comic book based. Can I get in? Cool, I'll be there. You know what I mean? And that's kind of been my approach to it, because to speaking to some of the stuff that Mark was talking about as far as publishers and the way the industry looks when you look at it from a a higher standpoint. Like, it's hard to believe that you're just going to get somebody to buy a ton of books off of you and everything's going to be, this pretty world. Like, you're going to have to go out here and make some things happen, meet some people, and sell and learn what it means to sell books. And so that's kind of been my approach was, from the ground. I wanted to learn everything from the ground. And sure, in the future, there's going to be some stuff I'm sure I'm going to let go. I would love to let go a lot of what it means to operate and fulfill. But for right now, I want to just understand it completely so that when I do want to talk to a bigger publisher, that conversation is a lot different than just me being like, I don't know. Okay, whatever you say. It's like, no, like, I get this. I get that. I understand where you're coming from. And so, for me, some of the biggest things I've learned has been just how you leverage, marketing and email lists and building up, again, to, what Victor said, you're trying to get patrons, you're trying to get people who believe in what you do and like what you do. And how do you communicate to them, when you're doing something, whether that's, a new book is coming out or you're doing a con or Kickstarter or whatever. Right. So it's, I would say, anybody looking to get into this, that, understand email lists, understand, followings, understand what it means to, that it's not just I'm selling stuff. It's I'm a part of a community. Right. You're not always up, if that makes sense. Sometimes you're sitting on the sideline and you're, the people who are in the community that you connect with, hey man, you're rooting in the fans you're rooting in the crowd for them sometimes. Right. And it's that it is that, and it's not just this, hey, it's transactional. I'm selling 50 books today or whatever. Like, that's not, I don't think that works out well if you're coming from this side of the business.
Yep. I agree 100%. I mean, the way I tell people, it's like music, like Bob Dylan come out with some original songs the first day out, he would be like, people are like, what? Your voice is kind of weird. You got some lyrics that make no sense. And instead, he started doing covers, and he started, rapping some other artists and working on his craft. And then little by little, you start kind of putting in your own style and your own lyrics. So that's kind of how I see it. If you're an artist out there, you work on your craft. And the way I do it is like doing fan art. Sometimes people just hate that. But I think that's how you get validity. I mean, people be like, oh, they like Batman. They're going to come see your version of Batman. And then, by the way, I also have my comic book. This is a story that I'm working on. You want to listen in that mixtape, mix CD kind of thing that you were talking about. It's like, you got to hustle and say, hey, you like that? Let me show you this one too, right? So it's something to me that it speaks to me, Jack. That's definitely true.
Yeah, I had a conversation.
Real.
I had a conversation with somebody the other day about like, salesmanship and all that, and authenticity is what, like, you can tell when someone is enjoying what they're doing. It's infectious, right? So like if you pick, fan art you don't care about, that people will be able to tell, right? But if you like pick something, right, you drew something from a particular comic that you like and it's somebody else's, right? That someone's gonna come and yeah, and then now you have a conversation about how cool that thing is, right? So then when you pivot to talking about the comic book you made, they say, well, yeah, like me and Victor like the same stuff, and he made this comic. But if they just think, oh, he's just going and making whatever just because he's trying to push, as many art prints this weekend, then people feel it. It is in the air, right? Like we've all done it when we walk down a convention, and you're just getting barked at from all, and they don't care about what you care about. They just care about pushing the sale, right? Yeah. But you get in that conversation with somebody and you're like, you know what? I never gave, maybe it was manga. I never gave manga a chance, but I know this. I'm talking to this person and we're geeking out about, Thundercats, or we're geeking out about, all this. We get same certain nostalgia. We play the same video, and you're just like, okay, well, you made them. I'll check it out, right? And you're like, oh wait, this is really cool. Yeah, it is a 100% human experience on that. So I would, it's doing the things that give you energy is going to translate not only to what makes it so you don't have to drag yourself out of bed in the morning, that you like wake up before your alarm gets up, goes off. And it becomes, an infectious experience where people who have that same energy will start getting drawn to you. It's exponential.
Yeah. Another thing too, that helps when starting, it's one thing I used to do was comparing myself to the final product of whatever the artists or people that I like was, and then forgot that to get to that final product, there's a ton of steps. So I started looking at artists' edition of the, like, for example, I fell in love. If I were to describe my style, it would be like Adventure Time meets Mike Mignola. So I was like, I want to know how, like, Mike Mignola, I literally went down on a rabbit hole of collecting his work and also kind of learning his style, because it was more architectural to me. Like, he had a specific, like, I was in a comfort zone there, but I wasn't looking at the final product. I was looking at all the failures that he went through. It's like, like, oh, look at, he doesn't draw feet. Okay, that gives me the right, you know what I'm saying? To start kind of like getting acquaintance with the process rather than the final product. And it's just so relieving. Like, I feel so, oh yeah, this guy's a human. It's like, because when you see the final product, sometimes it's been rendered by other people. It's been like a product of literally of maybe 5 people at the end of the day. Like, you look at Chris Bachalo's work, he was doing pencils for a while, and then everything else you see, it's inks by other people. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's so I would say, if you're out there again and you're kind of searching for that path, find your mentors, find, not just the final product of what you're trying to get at. It's just kind of where did they start? Where was the beginning?
Feel like I'm in a class. This is like gold. Seriously. Wow. This is so dope.
I hope you're taking notes.
Yeah. I don't have the luxury to, unfortunately. I'm going to leave it to, I think, some of the folks that are on here that are listening. I did tell them to make sure that they had a pad and paper anyway, or a pencil or whatever. Hopefully they're not drawing or writing. Hopefully they're writing the tidbits. But, no, seriously, I think that we touch upon the relationship piece being such a formidable piece of how people gravitate towards your work and invest in you, no matter what, right? And so the personality, the authenticity, and the passion for the work really does speak volumes for people. So when you're at a con and people are barking at you and saying, hey, come over here and buy like all these books for, $30, $40, you're probably going to look at them sideways and be like, Yeah, I'm not really invested in you because you literally didn't even ask me my name, right? And even the most established folks, when I've been to cons, I've actually been surprised at some of the bigwigs and how generous of their time they are, and I think they understand that that's a piece of the, I guess the piece of the hustle is making sure that people are seen and connect with you. So, speaking of investing, I know some of y'all, we have talked about this, but can you share of the pros and cons about maybe, looking at funding opportunities and the ways that you operated to kind of get your book off the ground? I know people have done Kickstarters, and people have done even self-publishing and then kind of done it at the back end on investing in themselves. So what are some of your, I guess, your takeaways or even knowledge about that? What are your preferences? What have you learned? And I'm going to have, let me see, let's say, Jack, we're going to start with you, and then Mark, and then Victor.
Yeah. So, the first 4 issues of Terminus are all just self-funded by me. So, it was just me, I saved up a ton of money. I knew this day would come one day. So I had saved up a ton of money for when it was. I mean, I'm just a writer, so I work with different artists per each issue. And so that part is tough. I sell at cons. Like, again, I was telling you the other events, and any place I can, I sell online to try to help kind of cover what's coming up for the next set of books. We did a Kickstarter in basically in the July for our volume 1, and that went really well. We raised had almost $15,000 was raised for our volume 1, which was basically issue 1 through 4 put together. And a lot of it was, kind of, I would say, just the connections from people I had met since I had started the journey. It wasn't just, oh man, Kickstarter, brings everything to you and it's all that. It was more of, some people who had seen the book that I worked with who really liked it, who they really supported and got kind of the bigger, higher tier stuff. And then there was a lot of digital sales where there were newer people in Kickstarter who were kind of seeing how it happened. I did a whole kind of promotional campaign for it, as far as from, I would say, as early as April into going into July, with just, telling people on the email list constantly, kind of, on Instagram, at cons, I'm always kind of talking about, signing up for the email list and that part of it. And so by the time the day 1 was, I think everybody kind of knew, and the people who really were behind me, and really wanted to see it come through, kind of showed up day 1. And then that day 1 that you kind of get in Kickstarter is a big deal, because then it kind of helps you to get stuff like getting on their front page and how long you stay on their front page, which then brings in more people. So that's kind of that's my experience with funding.
Yeah, and congratulations. That's huge. I remember when you were doing that crowdfunding through Kickstarter, how successful it was and how much hustle you had. And it was so cool to see it grow in like the first day. I think you met it plus, didn't you? The first day it was like something crazy.
Yeah, our initial goal was 4,000, I believe, and we met it the first day.
That's insane. That's awesome. Congratulations.
I have a question. Real quick. For Mark and Jack, like how when you structure your funding, how do you go about working with artists and other people? Like, it's all part of that, or your question, or do you kind of like do the research, like the market, okay, where you should be at, and does that tell you it's the artist? It's that what you're looking for in terms of costs? Because there's a lot of investment from your, I'm starting to do that now with a colorist that's helping me on some stuff, but I'm curious to see how you guys go about it.
Is this
I'd
more
say,
like how you determine rates? Oh, sorry, Mark. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, along those lines, you know, and just kind of feeding into your, I guess, the question of funding your projects, right? I mean,
so yeah, there's you know, we when we talked last week a little bit, we talked a little bit about you know, the difference between freelancers and creators, right?
Yeah.
So your ability to barter and come up with win-win solutions with other creators is typically much greater. So for example, I worked on a book, Dead and Still Dying, you know, so this is one of my books. The illustrator for this book, he's also a writer, illustrator. He has his own series. So he knew, okay, if we make this book together, this is another book I'm going to have on my table to sell when I hit, you know. Also, he knew that when we do the Kickstarter, we can throw in his other books as add-ons and stuff like that. So now, like, he said, okay, well, am I going to charge like a page rate the same way that I would charge a complete stranger, you know, like a page rate? Because this is a long-term investment for me. I can make more money off the end, you know, because depending on numbers of books he sells, because he's now partial owner like of that series, you know, his ability to what he's going to get paid per page, you know, 22 pages, right, is going to, you know, it's just not going to be paid out the same way as like it would if a freelancer, right? Overgeneralization, freelancers want money from you, the creator. Creators want money from customers and future customers, right? So, you know, it's just a different, you know, structure. So anytime, if the numbers don't work, you know, you're probably not in the win-win situation that you wanted to be in anyway, you know? You know, from a fundraising standpoint, yeah, Kickstarter's great, you know, but the idea that people say, oh, I gotta raise like a few $1,000s. And it's like, okay, like I want to dispel one of like the myths, you know, that I see daily is like, people are like, oh man, that's the barrier to entry. And it's like, no, like people come and bring these like little zines to me like all the time at conventions, right? We see them at any place, they're selling them for $1 or whatever. Well, guess what one of these costs to make for, you know, 25 of them will cost you about $74 from Comics Wellspring. So all you got to do is sell 74 of these for $1, right? Yeah. And now you have funded your first comic. You sell you sell those 25 of these for, you know, $5 to $10 a pop, whatever you're charging. You know, you can go that way, you know, and in any endeavor, community is the biggest determining factor of success, right? So this thing right here, the trash can, there's 4 creators that contributed to this, you know, so they were just like, oh yeah, I can put a 3-page story into this. You put a 3 or 4-page, you know, short story into this, and we'll get it all printed together, and then we sell it at a table. So $74 split 4 ways. That's a pretty cheap buy-in, you know. You know, I would say get creative. And you know, what is happening in the zine space, like at Zine Fests, like just Google Zine Fest. Go to that is the most DIY punk rock place where people are like not asking permission, like, oh, you know, they are just doing it. If they're stapling stuff together. One of my favorite comics, I'll dig it out in a second, but it's one of our creators, like he on his own printer, he just made his trash can issue 0 on his own printer. It looks really dope, you know, like, and it's like one of my treasured possessions, you know. Yeah, you know, so that was self-funded, you know, cost him like ink cartridge and a crap ton of paper, you know, and he had to get one of those elbow staplers, you know, or that long arm stapler thing, whatever they call it, you know. Yeah, you know, get creative, and those creator spaces are where those people will show you, you know, hey, this is the path of least resistance. You know, I think a lot of times, yeah, we get in this, man, I'm gonna have to raise $5,000 for this, right? You know, even writers, you know, like myself, because I'm not drawing, you know, like a zine is very easy to work on, get creators to come in together, right? But it's got to be a win-win solution for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, for me, I mean, the way I see it, it's you also have to be patient, man, because a lot of people come off the gate with, oh, I have a book, everybody's going to love it because I love it. And it's not necessarily going to be like that. So the way I've gone about this from the beginning is be like, I have zero expectations. If I sell one book, I'm awesome. You know, there's that one book that person is going to share with 2 people, then 3 people, and then maybe 5 years later, you see the result. I mean, ideally, not that it doesn't take that long, but it's very rare to see like the overnight, you know, success stories. And we all dream of that. I dream of it too. But I've been blessed in many different ways, just meeting people that think alike, that when, you know, meeting new friends at the cons. So for me lately has what my goal has been at cons. Number one is I just want to get my return of investment back. Like if I sold enough to pay for my table and my prints, to me, that's a successful day. Even if it's just a table, right? It's maybe a percentage of what I've invested into the work, other than my time, etc. Because if I were to charge for my time plus all of that, I'm not, this is not to make money. I'll be honest with you. I'm doing this because I truly love the idea of sharing my comics and sharing my work with people. So sometimes you find me giving them away, or because I truly think the power of marketing, you know, sometimes you give something away and it comes back in times, you know, double what you put into it. And when you do it from your heart, I swear, like it will pay back. I know a lot of friends that come in with really high expectations, and they get frustrated because they didn't sell anything, or they sold only 1 or 2. But I try to kind of steer that into, okay, how many other conversations you met? You met some artists, you met, you know, some of the wins are not necessarily tangible. They're abstract, but I swear that they will pay back. So being patient and just don't be so critical with yourself. Just in comic books is not a lucrative business. It's like coffee. People think coffee is a lucrative business. It's not. I have a couple of friends that have a coffee shop, and if I can make it, you know, it takes time. It does take time.
So I knew this would happen because y'all are like Zen masters, and you got so much knowledge. I think I learned even more this second time around. I have more questions to add to this listing. So we may have to get together at some point and do this all over again. Maybe do like what they call it, like an offshoot, kind of like, oh, this is the after party. So it might have to be a Gen X Con after party conversation. What are some, so for folks who want to do what you're doing, what's the one huge piece of advice that you would impart upon them?
The first thing I would say, so when people reach out to me, you know, so I get a ton of submissions, you know, do something, make something. So somebody comes up to my table and says, hey, I have an idea for a comic. It could sound like the coolest thing in the world, versus someone who came up and handed me this. I know that this person was like, I'm going to a con. I'm going to talk to somebody I want to submit books to. I'm going to print something. I'm going to show up in hand, you know, put their contact information on the back, right? Like, to me, this person is not one piece of paper ahead of the other person. This person is 1,000 steps ahead of that other person. So then what I will do when someone gets something like this in my hand, you know, I see their social media, I look at their social media. I'm not looking at follower count. I'm looking at who else in the indie comic space they're friends with. If they are friends with 50, you know, other indie comic creators, it doesn't matter if their talent is low. They are surrounding themselves by other people who care about making comics. So this person, this demonstrated to me, they're going to make comics for a really long time, you know, because they're surrounding themselves with people who are going to encourage them. So we get on the conversation. We do something like, hey, let's try and put something together for one of the zines or the ashcans or the anthologies or whatever. Let's try and get you in that. And we watch them play well with others, you know, and be courteous and kind and considerate of other people in that process. That person is 100% open door. You can make comics with Lesserknowncomics as long as you want, because you've demonstrated those two things. You know, it is a much these are all things that are in people's control for getting into, it's like what our kindergarten teachers said, right? It doesn't take any skill to like show up and not, put gum in Jimmy's hair or to like pull Sandy's hair, right? Like, don't spit on the slide, like those are things that are completely in our control, So that's what the first piece of advice I'd have is, do something, be proactive, and learn to play well with others in this space.
Yeah, I agree. I say it's, yeah, definitely. If you're starting, 100% with you, Mark, because I did that. I wanted to look at my favorite artists and okay, who are they following? Like, who are the artists that they're following? Because this is my favorite artist. He's following some other artists because they look up to them or like their art. So why? Let me go see that. And also, kind of, I made it a thing where this is kind of like an internal rule. Like if you're Instagram, if you're an artist and you Instagram, it's not all about art. It's just about, and I'm sorry, like it's all about your pets and all that stuff. I would not follow back. I'm sorry. I have a personal account for that. This Vodlines account, it's all, I curated it, and it was through learning because the algorithm feeds you what you give it. So it's like, I kind of learned the hard way. So I had to unfollow some people, and I was like, but I love you, but I want to see, when I open my Instagram, I want to see comic books. I want to see art. I want to see drawings. I want to be inspired. So that's one thing. Learn to use your tools, work on your craft, I cannot tell you how important that is. Like whether it's writing, drawing, your business, whatever it is, like, don't assume that you are the best at it. Always come in with an attitude of student attitude, learning, asking. I'm constantly teaching, like looking for workshops or classes online, or just kind of asking questions or books and doing it. I cannot tell you, like the act of doing it's the most important thing. Just getting out there, finish, not perfect, kind of like what Jake says. Like it just, even if it's like a zine, like you have it right there in your hands, right? $1 out there, it's done. It's something that you will be proud of, and your family will talk about, and your friends will talk about, right? And then the last thing is walk the talk. You can stand there and talk all day about how awesome idea you have, but where is it? I mean, I need to see it. I'm a visual person, and I have had tons of people come to me. I have these great ideas, but I'm an artist, and I need to kind of see it. And even when you are working with different artists, I have had good experiences and not so good, in the sense of like, okay, we have a certain rule, right? You have ideas, but I'm not your AI where I'm going to produce like constantly, for you. We got to kind of put a limit in what is your vision. Like, what is it? Make it clear for those artists. What are, coming with visuals, coming with mood boards, whatever it takes to help create that book or that story that you're working on.
Yeah. I mean, I could pretty much piggyback on all the things these guys said, and that would be really is the core of it, is doing it right. Do something, right? Like, the having an idea is great, and just like we talked to I talk to people at cons, and they're telling you about ideas, and you're like, man, this is great, it's awesome. But when you see somebody who has a book and they're telling you, and you see that book and you feel it, it's just a different conversation. It's much different. So even if it is, like I'm coming from the writer standpoint, so I know what it means to go and try to find freelancers, and there's a lot of work to that. There's obviously the expense of it all. But in general, I don't necessarily think if you had an idea as a writer that you would need anything more than an ash can. You know what I mean? Like, could you make it to an ash can? Can you afford to get 5 pages and then you write the rest via some type of character bios for a book? Again, to what Mark was saying, which is, you got enough for an ash can. Okay, now go to Comics Wellspring and get 50 of them made, or 25 of them made. And that's going to change the conversation. It's going to change the conversation you have with freelancers when you're looking for other artists, because they see that you've actually put something together They've got context that you are, real to an extent. And I think that helps out a lot. So from anybody coming from that standpoint, I would say do it and, be patient with it. I think, again, part of it is so much about, being a part of the community and building your own kind of following that I don't think you necessarily, if I could go back and do it all over again, I wouldn't have produced issue 1, then got on Instagram. Like I wouldn't have done it that way. If I could go back, I would have been like, you know what? The first time I got concept artwork done, put it on Instagram. Tell people about it, get them excited and work it through and through and through versus, feeling like you have to have a complete project or something of that. So I think that's, to me, what, I would say is just do it, Nike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I got like one more advice. Like for artists, be good to your writers. Respect their time, respect their, they're funding you. This is money that comes from saving for a long time. This is money that comes from, Kickstarter, from real people. Don't act like a diva, like seriously. And then for writers and authors, be patient and be good to your artists because it does take time. And sometimes, to sculpt your dream, it's not gonna look pretty at first. You're gonna have to. It's a give and take. And I think in the indie world, if we want to survive against the big names out there, we need to kind of support each other. We need to kind of come together and work together because that's how it is. We all know each other. I'll be like, hey, I don't have. That's not my style, but I know somebody that can help you with that. And and that's to me a blessing in disguise. So I like it. Kind of like helping each other in one way or the other. Yeah. So listen.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Our tagline is treat your artists like humans, and there's a whole way of actually predicting human behavior based on like the humanity you give to somebody. That's kindness, that's fairness, that's giving them psychological safe space. That's working on something that provides purpose and meaning. And then above all else, like integrity, everybody you work with, if you want to preserve that relationship, they need to know confidently that the way I talk to Victor or Jack or Gen X when I'm in the room with them is the way that I talk to them about them when they're not in the room with me. That's how you guys get past the disagreements. When you hear somebody say something that you're like, man, that sounded weird. I didn't really like that. But I know that this person has integrity, so I can just come to them and I can say, hey, why did you say that? And we can have a talk like human to human. That is the number one skill set, on this path, because a lot of us, we're doing this over internet, right? Do not have conversations that require emotional intelligence via text message. I'll tell you that much too. That is a pick up the phone, virtual phone call type of thing, face to face, yeah. If you see yourself typing out a paragraph of criticism, just delete that paragraph and say, hey, let's set up some time to talk on the phone.
Yeah, agreed. And then we all know each other, man. Like sometimes if you're an a-hole, people's not gonna want to work with you. They're not gonna want to work with you. They're like, hey, you know what? Don't burn your bridges. I'm all about customer service, man.
Yeah, it's true. It's so true. Well, listen, we predicted this. We knew that we had at least another semester's worth of information for a college course. I hope we can do this again, seriously, because I think that, we scratched the surface. I want to let everybody know, too, that these folks are exactly what you just saw here. That these are the most authentic folks in the business. So reach out to them. They are so giving. I'm a better human being getting to know each of these folks. They've been generous with their time. And I hope I've been a good human being to you all as well, because I literally, like you said, your circle is small. You try to keep it small so that way you can manage those relationships as authentically as possible. I do want to say this was the first session, and James Chapman wrote, and you probably saw this, he said, I was going to go to Motor City Comic-Con, but decided to be here, and he's glad he made that decision.
Awesome.
So, James, thank you so much for that. That speaks volumes. And we're only in the first session, so you got to put your seatbelt on and put some more, food in front of you, because you're gonna be here for a minute, getting to learn some great things. All these gentlemen have their booths in the back end, and so if you wanted to just check out their stuff, reach out to them. All the information's on there, and they look amazing. So at least go there and check out those booths. But definitely just be part of their mailing list. That's the best way you can support them. So that way you're on the cusp of everything. I think I own almost everything, Jack, that you put out, which is and it's all signed. And I'm like, I literally have a PC side of my box that I don't let anybody look at or touch. So you're in there. I appreciate it.
Nice.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This is Gen X. This is the continuation of the Comic-Con.
Thank you, Gen X.
You're awesome. And folks, we have Tahani Farr coming up next. So get ready for that. I'm going to make sure on the back end that we're good with the audio and video, and we will be back. Peace.
Yeah, thank you.
Wow.